Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Good evening, Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper here with Matt Baiamonte, and it's rivalry week. Yes, BYU and Utah back again, and now it takes on a power conference stage. We've got a loaded hour for you coming up where we're going to be breaking down this matchup. Saturday night, BYU and Utah, 8:15 kick right here on KSL News Radio. And Matt, it takes on a power conference stage, BYU and Utah. It's going to be some big-time stuff here.
You almost forget how much fun this week is, Mitch. It's been so long, and the dynamic has been weird for so long with them not being in the same conference. Now they're conference foes, and it just feels right. It feels so good to have this game, and it has meaning, significant meaning, especially after what happened this weekend in the Big 12 Conference.
On a week like this, BYU and Utah, the fans are so critical to this rivalry. I mean, they are part of the fabric of what makes this rivalry one of the best in college sports, and we want to hear from you, Cougar Nation, throughout the hour. How confident are you that this 8-0, number 9 ranked BYU team will beat 4-4 Utah this week? 801-575-8255. That's 801-575-8255. We'll take your phone calls coming up a little bit later. But, Matt, as we dive into this matchup and start things off, how are you feeling about this game? How confident are you that this undefeated BYU squad will take down the Utes?
I'm only mildly confident, and I don't know if I've just been scarred from the past, Mitch, or what, but I just feel like, especially with the quarterback situation, I know Utah's quarterbacks have not played well, but it's uncertain who's going to play. I have a hunch who's going to play, but I could very well be wrong. You never know in this game, and BYU's a better football team. They're better in all three phases of the game, but this rivalry game, man, it does some weird things as we've seen in the past. And so I'm confident that BYU can win, but just mildly.
The game does create some wild fourth quarter, into the game outcomes that are wild, but I'm very confident going into this one, and the reason for that is because I've just got questions about the fight in this Utah team. This is not a typical pesky underdog Utah team that's on the climb. This was a season where it was playoff or bust, and they're 4-4. They're reeling, and they haven't lost to the world beaters in the Big 12. They've lost to the likes of Arizona. They lost to Houston, and I know Houston's playing a lot better football as of late, but still, they are not losing to the best teams in this conference. I question kind of, what does Utah turn to as the reason to give them the confidence going into a matchup against BYU, who is on the complete opposite end of the confidence, where it doesn't matter what's stacked in front of BYU. The Cougars feel like they can overcome anything and come away victorious. They've done that at every turn this season. So I come into this game for BYU's chances feeling very confident because BYU is the much better football team. They should take care of business, and no longer is this rivalry game, Matt, an indictment on BYU's existence. Before, when it was an Independence versus Pac-12, it was always, Independence isn't working. You got to bail out of this thing as soon as possible because Utah's blowing past you. Now it's an equal playing ground. This is Big 12 matchup, and BYU is the one that's riding high right now.
This is the first rivalry game, Mitch, that we will experience in this new era of college football. Not only the playoff era, but also the NIL era and the unlimited transfer era. And I think it's a good point that you make, which is it's assumed that because it's a rivalry game, it doesn't matter what type of season you're having, you're going to get up for it and you're going to respond and you're rally for the university. But in today's college football, there's not much incentive for the player to be rah-rah, name on the front of my chest, because everything that we tell these kids is get as much money as you can, transfer to the best situations you can. You don't need to battle through adversity. And there's some exceptions to this. I think BYU is an exception to this. They have a tremendous culture. And the fact that they were able to bring so many players back from a season last year in which they were a disappointment, not going to a bowl game. That was not the season they wanted to have. They retained a lot of those players, and you're seeing that chemistry and continuity pay big dividends. I don't know. I'm curious to see that part of it, because there's a part of me that thinks Utah is not going to get up for it because that's just college football in today's day and age. Earlier today I read, I couldn't believe this, Mitch, there was a player on South Carolina's football team that committed to Kansas's football team, and we're in the middle of the season. This commitment's for next year. So I think it's hard to manufacture this, I'm going to play for the university, I'm going to play for the fans. I'm not saying that won't happen. It's just we've never seen it in this era, and I'm curious how Utah's going to respond, because this is the type of game where if it goes south early, if BYU can punch them in the mouth early, get up 7-0, 10-0, you could see this Utah team fold.
You definitely can't manufacture it, but you can definitely, if you're the coaching staffs, which both staffs have a lot of experience with this rivalry, you can educate the players on what this game means. And this was Kalani Sitake earlier today on what this game means and how he's approaching it with his team.
The fans themselves have already educated our players on how important this game is. But, for us as a coaching staff, we have to get back to the basics. And it doesn't really matter who's on the other side. We've got to – there's a lot of things that we can do differently and do better as a team first before we can start really worrying about the drama and the emotions that go into the game.
It's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday night. First trip to Salt Lake for BYU at Rice-Eccles since 2018, Matt. And I think whenever I think of these games on the road against Utah, one of the things that always stands out is you've got to avoid the turnovers. And I feel like if BYU does that, they're going to be pretty happy with the outcome on Saturday night.
That's the big storyline, and that's been kind of the through line throughout some of these losses in the past decade or so. It's just disastrous turnovers that change football games. And I think that's another reason I'm a little concerned, Mitch, is Jake Retzlaff has improved. This offense has improved. They're playing some of their best football of the year. However, turnovers have been a problem in the past. And if BYU is going to lose this game, I think you're going to look at that turnover line, and BYU might be -2, meaning they have 2 turnovers given to Utah, and that's really the only way I see the Utes winning this football game.
Here's Jake on the environment he's expecting at Rice-Eccles Stadium on Saturday night.
It's going to be fun. We know that place is super hostile, especially when we go up there, and so we're super excited for it. It's obviously going to be another test, and it's going to be another tough game, and especially up there, it gets a little tougher.
Kind of crazy, Matt, to think that BYU has not won at Rice-Eccles Stadium since 2006. That was Beck to Harleen. Now, granted, there's only
Put him in the books, the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year.
Ralph Sokolowski still screaming through the speakers on that one. Granted, there's only been 5 meetings in Salt Lake since, but there's been a lot of heartbreak up in Rice-Eccles. So I think that's one of the reasons maybe that could be causing some fans and people to feel a little bit concerned. But I got to say, Matt, that this BYU team, what you've grown to know about BYU football in the past, it just doesn't seem to apply to this group. This group just seems like they are completely built different, whether it's Florida games, 2 time zones, it's day games. It doesn't matter to these guys. They just show up, and they always give you an answer when you feel like they need one. I'm pretty confident, again, in how BYU should feel going into this game.
This show is called Cougar Nation. It's a show for you, BYU fans, to call in, share your thoughts. It's not every day, though, Mitch, that we have an opponent call in to share his thoughts. We have a diehard Ute fan on the line. He's going by the name Anonymous, but let's bring him in. What do you think about this matchup, Utes and Cougs? Are you there?
All right. Anonymous is not there. The Anonymous Ute fan is not there. Let's go out to Jordan from West Jordan. He wants to answer today's question. So how confident are you, Jordan?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I got you.
Perfect. Yeah. To answer the question, and if I'm a little quiet, I apologize. I got a sleeping baby in my arms. I'm very confident, and I'm not 100% confident, of course. I would say like an 85% chance. And the reason why I say that, with this year in college football, we've seen that anyone can be beaten. The biggest teams with the highest likelihood of winning have lost to teams that no one saw coming. But the reason why I have a lot of confidence right now with this BYU team is 2 reasons. The leadership and the coaches, and the leaderships and the players. They're definitely taking every game one step at a time, and like what they say, they're focused really hard. They're seeing it as their Super Bowl. And I really loved one interview that Jake gave. I don't remember where, but he was saying something like he learned to love the game of football, not just playing the game, but practices and everything leading up to the games and the whole process of the games. And it's that attitude that I think is going to lead this team to being able to just be consistent and continuous and doing a really good job. So I have a lot of confidence they can go down and beat Utah.
Jordan, thanks for the call. We appreciate that. I think there's some good comments in that call, so we appreciate you calling. And we got to take a break, though. We'll get to our anonymous Ute caller is on the line. We're going to get to you after the break, Mr. Anonymous Ute fan, on the phone line. This show brought to you by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit them online at cbutah.com. Central Bank, proud sponsors of Cougar Nation. Again, we're taking a timeout. On the other side, we'll take more phone calls as BYU and Utah. It's rivalry week here on KSL News Radio. It's BYU. It's Utah. The rivalry week. Throw it down on an election week. Man, this week is nuts. It's going to be awesome. BYU and Utah, Saturday night, 8:15 kick. We'll get coverage started at noon with Cougar Sports Saturday. We'll be up at Roland Hall in Salt Lake with some extended pregame beginning at noon. We're going to have a lot of fun in Salt Lake. Mitch, Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. And, Matt, I think we should get out to the phone line and take some more calls. 801-575-8255. Let's get out to our anonymous Ute caller. What's on your mind?
So I am a huge, crazy Utah fan. No, I'm not a Cougar. I was raised a Cougar, but luckily I got educated on football. Just kidding. I'm just teasing.
Ouch, that was painful.
I'm just teasing. I have to say, though, BYU is playing like the Utes should be this year. The Utes put all of their hopes and dreams on Cam Rising, which they should have stopped doing 2 seasons ago. Isaac Wilson did not get developed like he should have as a quarterback with their team, and Utah is playing very poorly offensively, but they're playing like a whole bunch of independent players running plays and not like a team running plays to gain offensively and defensively. And as sad as so terribly sad that it is, this game is not going as much rivalry, as much adrenaline and posturing is going into this game already. I don't think it's going to be as tight of a game as the Utes as we would like it to be. I would like to see them play better. I'd like them to do more running plays. I would like the offensive team to actually be a team, but they're not playing that way this year. And I've gone to every rivalry game since 2006, and I'm not going to the game Saturday. I can't set myself up for that kind of disappointment.
I think some BYU fans feel that way too, that they're afraid to go to the game from the disappointment side of things.
Well, I've been to all the winning Utah games. I've been to 2 losing Utah games at Lavelle Edwards, and it's a hard thing to take. But what's harder is to watch these schools that, as we put all of this energy and emotion into football and get excited and root for our teams and be proud of them, and to see them play at a lower level football than we expect out of the schools. And BYU is playing like you haven't seen them play for 18 years. Like Kalani Sitake, whatever he's done this year, he lit them on fire, and they are playing amazing. Yes, they still have opportunity, but comparatively to the Utes, they're not in the same level of football this year.
It's good stuff. My opinion. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I think there's a good point there, Mitch, which is I think BYU fans maybe are undervaluing the importance of continuity and chemistry. Coach Witt today did his press conference. You can go watch it online, but we'll have a couple clips for you later in the show. He talked about how in this NIL era, he's got like 50 new players up there at Utah. And BYU went through this last year when they had a roster overhaul with about 50% new players on that team as well. It's hard to develop chemistry and to get things to click. Jake Retzlaff has talked about this a lot. Like, what's the biggest difference between last year and this year? And he's like, repetition, time together. That still matters in college football, and BYU does have a decisive edge in that category coming up this Saturday.
Back to the phone lines we go, and we want to hear from all of you in Cougar Nation and, Ute fans as well. If you want to get on board here and share your thoughts on the game, how confident are you that BYU will beat Utah this week? 801-575-8255. Spencer from St. George, how confident are you?
Mitch and Matt, the M&M's like a legendary candy. Good to talk to you.
Good talking to you.
You too.
I got two things real quick for you. First off, I'm tired of hearing all the BYU is a fluke. They're winning this just by luck, and this game by luck, and this game wasn't supposed to be won. That's said by a small number of dorks of a certain fan base because they're peanut butter and jealous that we look more like their old selves than they do currently. And I'm tired of hearing that. I'm glad to see that this game is coming so we can put that to rest. Second thing, what gives me a lot of confidence is the way that the team has responded to adversity, because we all know with the history of this game, it's going to come. This game is crazy. You know, a team can be way better than the other one, but it's still a close game 95% of the time. But, for example, Jake Retzlaff, if he has, some bad gas and turns the ball over, he doesn't shrink in the moment and dwell on it. He rebounds well. The team surrounds him well, and they respond just amazingly. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Spencer, thanks for the call, man. I appreciate that. That's some good stuff because I do think that BYU, they have this ability to respond at a high level. I mean, and I think that UCF game a couple of weeks ago was a prime example where BYU's up 17-10, and you feel like momentum is swinging in favor of the Knights. 2-minute drill action, and Jake loves that. He goes down the field, connects with Chase Roberts. It's 24-10, and that slams the door shut on any chance of UCF pulling off what would not have been an upset, but really taking that game over and, really kind of asserting itself with the momentum. So I love that take because this BYU team is not a fluke. They're one of the best teams in college football this year. We need to stop thinking that BYU is just smoke and mirrors winning these games. They're dominating their opposition in these Big 12 games. Outside of the Oklahoma State game, BYU is controlling these games, and that's why, coming up tomorrow, Matt, that college football playoff ranking, I'm optimistic that BYU could be, 8, 7, maybe as high as 6 potentially, because you look at the game control, you look at the strength of record. This is not some fluke BYU team. This is a really good group that across the board is very balanced in all three phases.
Cougar Nation is a national fan base, Mitch, and this show is going national as well. We got a caller from the great state of Nevada. Kurt, what's your confidence level that BYU is going to get the win this week?
Look, I am very confident talent-wise. We have the ability 100% to blow them out of the water, but being that this is a rivalry game, every single rivalry game, both teams show up, and so I am confident that we will win, but I also think that if Kyle Whittingham is smart, he'll kick his team into gear and say, look, do we want a losing season this year? Like, if we're going to turn this program around this year, it's got to start with beating BYU. And so I think that the Cougars, if we go in thinking, oh, yeah, we're so much better than them, we got this in the bag, we're going to win no matter what, that is when we're probably going to lose. So we have to make sure that we're not getting too hot-headed, too overly confident, but just going in, making sure that everyone is not missing any assignments, that we're getting the job done, we're controlling the rock, and that if Jake Retzlaff has minimal turnovers, and as long as the whole team as a whole, right, is not turning over the ball and making mistakes, it should be a very easy win. But we just have to be able to be humble enough to not think that all the time, because anything can change in a rivalry game.
Good stuff, Kurt. Yeah, it's true. You have to go in the right approach. I would disagree slightly on the Utah point of things, Mitch. We touched on this earlier, but you just can't assume in today's day and age of college football that the players are going to respond to the message of, we want to get the program back on track. How many of these guys care about the program? How many of them are looking at the portal or looking for their next opportunity? That's what makes this so interesting, is we've never had a game like this where there's the NIL component, the transfer portal component, where it's unlimited transfers. How does Utah respond? That's a big question in this game.
Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank. News, traffic, and weather. We'll get to your phone line. Austin from South Jordan. More Cougar Nation after this. How can you not be ready for BYU Utah week? Now in a power conference, Power 4, Big 12 football, BYU and the Utes. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. Every Monday night, we're holding it down here on Cougar Nation, 6 to 7, taking your phone calls, answering your text. in the world of BYU football. Matt, it's been a great show thus far. Let's get back out to the phone line and welcome in Austin from South Jordan. Austin, appreciate your patience here. How confident are you that BYU is going to take care of business and beat Utah on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm mostly confident. I'm not going to say I'm fully confident for two reasons. The first, kind of a counterpoint to what the guy from Nevada just said, that he said that both teams will show up. From my experience, it seems like at least one team either plays significantly better or significantly worse than normal in a rivalry game. And the second point is kind of a counterpoint to the NIL. Maybe because of NIL and transfer portal, instead of the team members getting in their heads and either performing way better or way worse because of the hype up, they're just going to play normal. And in that case, BYU will probably win.
Interesting stuff. I just don't buy it, Mitch. I could very well be proven wrong, but I just don't know in today's day and age if the rivalry game, if the rah-rah for the Gipper, for the name on the front of the jersey, if that's going to overcome that. We'll see on Saturday. That's to quote Chris Berman, one of my favorite broadcasters growing up, that's why they play the game. But I'm not convinced that because of the rivalry game, Utah's going to get up for it just because, that's what they do.
BYU and Utah's had some amazing moments in this rivalry. I mean, you just think back, the last meeting, 2021, that was a huge breakthrough for BYU, winning that game 26-17. That was Kalani's first victory over Utah. And honestly, that was a game that felt a little bit bigger of a margin than the final score would indicate. BYU was comfortably in front in that game, and that was just an amazing weekend for Cougar Nation. You get the Big 12 invite, and then you take down Utah. That was a special one. I know Cougar fans love that 2006 game, Beck to Harleen, and how could you not? I mean, that was the stuff of legends. The final play of the game, and then you had 4th and 18. And there's been so many moments, even in the 80s when Mark Wilson gets, or late 70s when he gets the NCAA record, and the back and forth between these fan bases, these programs. It's special stuff, and I hope that it continues to grow in the Big 12 era because, I knew that BYU, Tom Holmoe and his regime always wanted to keep this game on the schedule, so I was kind of opposed to it when it was independent BYU because I wanted novelty on the schedule in that first month of the season. But now that they're in conference, if you're going to play this game, better that it's in a conference because now it actually has some real meaning in the standings because 3 years ago, BYU wins the game and then Utah goes to the Rose Bowl and was like, well, you might have beat us, but we went to the Rose Bowl. You went to Shreveport. And I like that can't be used now in this one. It matters a ton, and they're in the same league. And look, Utah can play spoiler, but BYU can really send Utah season spiraling to the point where Utah might not go to a bowl game. And I think that's kind of motivation for BYU to really send that thing sinking down further for the Utes who go into the game on a 4-game losing streak. Back to the phone line. Steve from Kaysville. How confident are you?
I'm confident. I agree with you that being a member of the conference is huge, makes a big difference. But Utah always seems to get up for this game, and BYU kind of patsies it. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I think BYU will win.
That's all that matters, Mitch. We saw in the Big 12 this week just the chaos that is unfolding in this conference. Iowa State losing on a game-winning drive by Texas Tech. Kansas State can't mount a comeback in the fourth quarter, losing to Houston, and that game's getting a little more interesting at the end of the year for BYU with Houston perhaps turning a corner, but you just got to win. Let me throw this your way, Mitch. On Instagram, and hey, we do have an Instagram, KSL BYU. We got a lot of extra content there on Instagram for you fans that have an Instagram account. We threw out there the question of the day on the gram. Former Coug herself, Mitch, Jess Chapman, said she only has a 5% belief that BYU will win this game. So I guess my question for you, she goes on to say, I'm scared for the Cougs. What scares you in this rivalry game, Mitch?
Because Utah's a really good defense, and BYU's offense could be shut down by Utah's offense or defense. Utah's defense is really good. This could be a 13-10 game, potentially, because Utah's got a really good D, and their front seven could cause some real problems for BYU and make Jake Retzloff a one-dimensional quarterback in offense if they shut down BYU's run game. If LJ Martin has success like he has shown in the past 2 games, BYU's going to be fine. And I think that they got to establish him early. They've had the tendency in road games this year, SMU, UCF, opening drive against UCF, the first 3 plays, handoff to LJ Martin, and one of them I believe was a 3rd and 2, and you had to go pick it up. That would be huge, I think, to open the game, get LJ going, and set that tone that this run game is going to be something that Utah has to account for, because I've seen many BYU teams go into Salt Lake and just not have much success on the ground. And there were years, too, what was it, 2018, where BYU goes in as a heavy underdog. Utah already clinched the Pac-12 South Division title. And, Matt Hadley got a few yards, and we kind of acted like that was something so spectacular. But in the grand scheme of it, you looked at the final box score and you go, that wasn't many yards. It's tough to run on Utah. They've always been good defensively, and still, even during this 4-game losing streak, it's not like they're giving up 30, 40 points a game. It's just their offense can't score 20 points. And if you can get to 24 points, I feel pretty good that you're going to win this ball game. But if you get into 13-10, and there's been some matchups over the years where it's 17-16, something low, if you're in that world, Utah's got a shot. But if you get up to that 24-30 mark where BYU has consistently operated in this season as a 30-point-plus team this year, BYU will win big. But if they leave it to be in the teens, then that gives me a little bit of pause where maybe I could feel a little bit more concerned.
Counterpoint to that would be, I thought UCF, what was that, man? Gosh, it's already been over a week since that game in Orlando. But UCF's defensive line is good. There's a lot of athleticism and talent on that defensive line. BYU kind of broke through in that game with LJ. You referenced a couple of those opening drive carries from LJ. I thought that was encouraging, that this offensive line, that they've had guys in and out with injury, right? Connor Pay, doubtful for this week. I don't think BYU expects him to play. But Bruce Mitchell and this offensive line that has been anchored on the outside by Braden Keim and Caleb Etienne, the run game has improved every single week. So I think that was an encouraging sign that they were able to run on a UCF defense that is, there's some talent there. So, but to your point, Utah's defense, 15th in the country, they're really stout. I do wonder a little bit, though, Mitch, if those numbers are deceptive, because they put out some really good defensive performances against teams earlier in the year that didn't know what they were. Like, I think Baylor would destroy Utah today. And that Utah defense made Baylor look like they couldn't move the football for a single first down. That Baylor team is way different. They'd have a lot more success against Utah's defense today. So it's going to be fascinating to see. But that number to me is just a hair deceptive, 15th in total defense.
I don't think that necessarily, because TCU only scored 7 or scored 13 on them. And TCU scored 34 this past weekend. It's pretty much the same personnel. Utah's a good defense. And, BYU has got to be ready for Utah playing at their best defensively. And Kalani even noted that on Monday that they've got to be ready, and they're familiar with these hostile environments. This was Kalani earlier today on that environment they're walking into in Salt Lake.
We've gone into hostile environments before, and this is going to be another one. So I think the guys are up for the challenge. They're excited for it. They should be. And it's a great opportunity for us to go play the game and just keep it that the game is the game.
Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit Central Bank online at cbutah.com. Taking our final time out, we'll get to more of your phone calls and text. It's Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you right here on KSL News Radio. Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. We'll be talking BYU and Utah on game day beginning at noon with Cougar Sports Saturday. We hold it down every Saturday from noon to 3 here on the Legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio from noon to 3. And if you miss any part of this show, subscribe to the podcast. Just search Cougar Nation wherever you get your podcast. You can also subscribe to Cougar Sports Saturday. We do a lot of different shows here on KSL News Radio, Matt, and these are the weeks that are the best because BYU and Utah, you do forget how fun these rivalry weeks can be, and the memories start flooding back, and it becomes a little more fun too when, well, you're an 8-0 football team, right?
I do kind of wish that Utah had held up their end of the bargain a little better, being at 8-15. Not ideal. There was a real opportunity to have a bigger spotlight on this game, but Utah, honestly, I feel like even if they had won that Houston game, their record would be better. Maybe there would have been more TV interest in having that in a better slot. So that's a little disappointing that, we kind of thought that the Big 12's decision to move this game out of that final week was an opportunity to amplify the rivalry, and instead, it's getting that late treatment. Coach Prime has been so adamant about how he hates the 8 p.m. window because the East Coast, they're snoozing through some of that game. So, like, if BYU were to have a big win, how amplified would that be being in that 8:15 time slot? But still, having it back on the schedule is great, especially with true meaning. Because from Utah's perspective, they can make things really hard for BYU. Now, the good news is, and I don't want to prognosticate anything here, but if you lose this game, BYU fans, you're still in the driver's seat for that Big 12 championship game. You're in a great spot thanks to losses by Iowa State and Kansas State. So losing this game is not detrimental to the long-term goals of winning a conference championship. It would make it a little more difficult because then you'd have to be perfect after that point to control your own destiny. But for Utah, there's an opportunity to make things more difficult for BYU in what's been a special season so far.
801-575-8255. This is the final chance, Cougar fans or Ute fans, if you want to get on board. 801-575-8255. This is your final chance to weigh in on the BYU-Utah rivalry here on Cougar Nation. So we've had some great text and some interaction on X. And you can follow us on X at Baiamonte, Matt, at Mitch_Harper, and at KSL Sports. The feeling around Cougar Nation right now, Matt, just feels that of confidence. One person replied to me on X and posted the Vince McMahon WWE just storming out, strutting out on the stage. One individual writes, real sports fan, infinitely more confident than when the season began, still realizing that anything can happen any Saturday. Thankfully, Saturday appears to have good weather in the forecast. It'll be cold, but BYU, I feel confident.
Yeah, I feel confident too. What really brings me, honestly, the most confidence, Mitch, is, and this might be kind of shocking for some BYU fans to hear, but it's BYU's quarterback play, Jake Retzlaff. He's fourth in the conference in passing efficiency. He's thrown for over 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns. He's not like leading the conference in yardage or touchdowns thrown, but he's gotten significantly better from last season. His completion percentage is up 10 percentage points, and more importantly, Mitch, the past month or so of football, I think you've seen real growth. His crazy mistakes that we saw in the first half of the season, they're few and far between in the last 4 BYU wins. Like, you'd be hard-pressed to find 3 really atrocious decisions from Jake Retzlaff in the past couple wins. I think he's been really good at picking his spots. And then the other thing I love about Jake, and this is where I think he's going to thrive in a rivalry setting, this dude has been such an underdog his whole career. Gets no recruitment because of the pandemic. At one point, he thought, finally, I broke through with a scholarship at UTEP, and then that fell through. Back to the grind. Gets his opportunity at BYU, fights through all that adversity last year, was, by some analytical outlets, was deemed the worst quarterback in the conference. He's far from the worst quarterback in the conference, and now he's got this confidence and swag and just great leadership tendency. I love having your quarterback with that kind of moxie and that kind of attitude going into a game like this. He's not going to be scared of the fans at Rice Eccles Stadium. He's not going to be scared of the moment. He's got all the reasons to be confident in this football team, and I like having that kind of leader at the helm for BYU.
Jake said that he's got to approach this game like any other week.
You always hear it around town, man. I mean, it's like they care about this game more than any other game on the season. But like I said, like you got to be able to approach it like another game week. You know what I mean? We talk about every week is a statement week. Kalani says that all the time. And so this is statement number 9 we got to make. And then, we talk about the way we prepare is every week is a Super Bowl for us. And so this is Super Bowl 9 for us. And so, yeah, the rivalry makes it a little bigger deal. But in our minds, we got to just keep our preparation the same because it's been working all year.
Jake Retzlaff has been impressive to the point where even Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham, who's not saying the letters BYU, but he does acknowledge Jake Retzlaff is doing some good things for BYU's offense.
I'd say the QB is the catalyst. You look at individual rushers, individual receivers. There's nobody that just jumps out statistically. It's a collaborative effort, but the quarterback is the catalyst, in my opinion, and playing good football. He's amongst the league leaders in pass efficiency. He's made some just a bunch of really timely runs during the course of the season, runs that have made big difference maker type of runs. And so I would say that is without a doubt the guy that makes it all go. But again, he's got a good supporting cast, but again, nobody is just jumping out on the stat line. I don't know if they have a top 10 receiver or a top 10 running back, but you don't need to. You don't have to do that to be successful.
Well said from Coach Whittingham, and he's gotten a lot of grief in this rivalry for not being complimentary towards BYU throughout his long tenure as the coach, but I think he's dead on the money there. When you have really good quarterback play, Mitch, you can win a lot of football games. You can have a great defense. You can have great special teams. You can have first-round NFL draft pick talent on your roster. But if you don't have a really good quarterback, it's hard to win in football. Having good quarterback play is essential, and BYU has that right now with Jake Retzlaff, and that does give me a lot of confidence.
Utah, on the other hand, they have the nation's 104th scoring offense in the country, and they've got some questions at the quarterback spot. Will it be Isaac Wilson or will it be Brandon Rose? Brandon Rose stepped in for Isaac Wilson in their game 2 weeks ago against Utah. Either way, Kalani Sitake is going to prepare for both quarterbacks.
We've got to prepare for anything that they can throw at us. I mean, they've had an extra week, so there's a lot of different things that we have to probably over-prepare for, but that's okay. We have to take a look at all the quarterbacks that are on the roster and be ready for them, and I think Jay's got a good start on that.
Excited stuff. I'm excited for this game, Matt. 8:15, late night. I just, again, to kind of close this thing out, when we talk about the question of the day, how confident are you? I just feel really good about this BYU football team. There's no weakness right now to this group. They might not have elite star power, but man, the whole sum of their parts is just operating at a high level right now.
Can I also add, too, I love going into this game feeling sure and confident with the special teams. I felt like if it came down to a Will Ferrell kick, that he would be more than likely to make that kick. I like where the punting game is. That has been solid. Not the length and the hang time of Ryan Rico, but no mistakes in the punting game. The coverage has been good. There's been no disastrous turnovers. That's happened in other rivalry games where there's just a disastrous special teams play that comes back to haunt you. I feel really great about the special teams going into the rivalry week.
Real quick, Matt, what's your favorite BYU-Utah memory?
Wow. I mean, it's back to Harleen. That was sensational. I felt like BYU was the better team in that game, and then to come from behind in Beck's senior season, I love that moment.
Yeah, that one was sweet. I also love Georgia still running in 2009. That was a lot of fun. 1996, though, last time BYU won by double digits. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if BYU replicated that, right? 37-17.
No doubt.
Let's see it happen, right? A JUCO California quarterback, number 12. Maybe he does it again up at Rice Eccles. Hey, have a great night, everyone. We'll talk to you on Saturday on Game Day, BYU and Utah.